Hello, I have perfected Portal Revolution on Steam by collecting all 21 achievements. This includes finding an endless loop, destroying the spire, staring at mannequins, and a few more we'll touch on a bit later. Welcome to my full review. Portal Revolution is a free-to-play modded story for the game Portal 2, developed and published by Second Face Software. You can find the game on Steam or from their website linked below. Starting with the settings menu, it's a very clean UI, and you honestly can't go wrong with a simple darkened theme. Everything you'd expect is there. They even made the keybinds extra large and readable, which is a great touch. All the default options were pretty good, aside from motion blur being on by default. One day gamers. Bloom is another option by default which I normally turn off, however it works well here so I recommend keeping it on. If you prefer to play with a controller, it does have full support here as well. There are no difficulty options, so it comes down to how familiar you are with base Portal mechanics such as shooting portals in mid-air, pressing buttons, and moving boxes. While the mod provides extra mechanics to the experience, they're all fairly simple and not complex enough to make the game feel impossible or even hard to progress. This allows anyone to jump in and have a good time. It felt refreshing, however I breezed through it and only struggled with very few select chambers, so take that how you will. The replayability only comes down to chasing extra achievements. If you could care less about them, well, this will be a one-time playthrough for you. Speaking of playthroughs, the gameplay is quite simple. You create color-coded portals, which you'll be able to walk through to make your way forward and complete the level. You start the game with a 1-minute cutscene staring at the ceiling. Once you're awake, you're greeted with a room and painting that may seem oddly familiar if you played the Portal 2 campaign, just with a little less chaos. The first half of Chapter 1 is teaching you the basics, which they do an amazing job assuming you've not touched a Portal game before, or at least for a while. This section was very well made, however it will spike up in difficulty once you've made it past the baby rooms, and you'll have to use quite a bit of brain power to progress further as the new rooms become more challenging. There are a few new mechanics such as the gel cleansing shower, new laser cube technology, and bombs which are used to shatter glass, all of which aren't complex enough to make the game feel impossible, allowing anyone, new to Portal or not, to play comfortably. Starting with the new laser cube variant, it provides an extra cube. When the laser hits the first cube, it comes out the second, allowing you to traverse with the laser like it's your own personal laser pointer, and this mechanic was awesome. I loved every chamber that included them. My biggest complaint is the lasers do not hurt you. I know some people will love to hear this, and truthfully it's not all that bad. They tied this to the lore by explaining that the equipment was built to withstand temperatures of up to 4000 Kelvin, but getting burnt and crispy was part of the fun. The bombs are also a very cool mechanic, however they're only used in one single chamber and never seen again. There are shattered glass windows placed throughout the entire game, and I wish it spent a little more time providing bombs to play around with. It was very short-lived, but by far my favorite section of the game. Now a fair chunk of those puzzles involves simply respawning the cube you used prior while being in a different location. Now it's been a long time, so I don't recall if Portal had these types of puzzles, so I'll absolutely have to revisit the game eventually. But after the second time of doing so, I caught the pattern, and it was one of the things that kind of upset me. That being the solution felt like a hollow victory. However, in the greater scheme of things, if I never caught that pattern, I'm sure I would have gotten stuck on a lot more puzzles, so it works out nicely here. The world is incredibly thought out and visually well put together. The game obviously reuses most of Portal's assets, but that is to be expected from a mod. The chambers can be fairly large and have the open world feel to them, all while being so linear. They did a good job at portraying how large the world is, when in reality you're forever stuck in large cubes. There is little to no handholding past the examples of how to use each mechanic, which is a great thing. You'll have to use your noggin a bit to figure out the puzzles for yourself, though most are incredibly obvious at what you need to do. However, doing it is usually the hard part. The exploration is one thing I would like to touch on a bit. The game tries its best to give you opportunities to explore the world, however you're usually met with a closed off location. There are a few times you could wander off the beaten path and actually find a secret room, which felt good to find, but doing so did nothing but raise questions on why it's there. They're not tied to anything from what I could find, so I'm assuming it's just a cute little Easter egg thrown in. I just don't quite understand why the world provides two paths to choose, but one is usually wrong, forcing you to walk back to the other. It bothered me more than it should have, absolutely. I can understand for the purpose of immersion, but it made exploration feel even more pointless than it already is. Just keep your focus on completing the level and you'll get by smoothly. There's also a fairly long section where you're forced to explore and progress forward with no indication past that. You'll have no voices talking to you, just your own silly little thoughts while you walk forward and search for what happened. The lore behind this made it reasonable, however it stretches on for a little too long. As for the audio portion of this review, I honestly can't think of a single bad thing to critique, which sucks because I love complaining. They nailed absolutely everything in this department. I never had a single problem. The soundtrack is banging, terrifying. The ambience can honestly be a little spooky, very mechanical sounding with a mix of crows and nature thrown in. The voice acting is very well done. It can be a little cheesy at times, but very fitting. Nothing was ever too loud, and I never lost my immersion from the world or its storytelling. Hey, you made it to the story section alongside my thoughts on it. I won't be covering the spoilers in great depth, but if you'd like to avoid them, skip ahead to the positive and negative section. Ready? Okay. The game serves as a prequel to Portal 2, being set after the events of Portal 1. We play the role of a cute, unnamed test subject in the laboratories of Aperture Science. It begins with us waking up in a maintenance personality core to a man named Sterling. He will then train us to be a part of an emergency response team. After his testing chambers, he will reveal he was misleading us, and his main goal is to activate a device which will restore the laboratories to full operation. We pretty much have to press a button for him as it requires human touch. In doing so, he'll set us free. Traversing all the test chambers, we will eventually reach the Spire, where this so-called device is located, and he'll explain and expands on Aperture's previous work with teleportation, allowing him to use it to reassemble and activate GLaDOS. Testing this device, it will cause it to malfunction, teleporting us to an older testing track, where we will then meet up with Amelia, who is a former Aperture employee whose mind has been copied into a core. She will guide us around the experimental test chambers until reaching the Spire once again. Amelia warns us the reactivation of GLaDOS will lead to a disaster as she previously killed all the test subjects when she was awake. Once we meet up with Sterling to try and reason with him, he refuses to change plans as the facility apparently needs GLaDOS. Before we start fighting him, Amelia reveals that Sterling was originally a vacuum cleaner that she created. So while her Roomba tries to murder us, we manage to complete the very few chambers and disable the device right on time, stopping him from using the device while also exploding the entire lab. In the post-credits, the explosion leads to the Spire being teleported to the moon, stranding us and Amelia there all alone. She explains she is a neuroscientist, that's a doctor for the brainsicles, or a brain wizard some might say, and the best she can do is put us in stasis as we were severely injured, which could potentially heal us, but it's not looking good. She then apologizes as she is clueless on what to do now that the Spire is completely broken and we're stuck in space. She steals my outro with the take care, and that is the end of the story. Now I thought the story was quite good and evenly spaced out. It was easy to understand what was happening, all while allowing a deeper interpretation with the ethical gray areas provided. The characters are incredibly well made and the voice acting is perfect. It surprised me with how much emotion can be shown from a robotic ball with an eye. I know Portal itself has this as well, but it was unexpected for me to feel that immersive connection. My only complaint is the story, or at least the characters, needed a little more time to develop. Everything happened so fast, and by the time you had a full feeling of the characters' personalities, the ending abruptly appeared. Regardless, the storytelling kept my attention throughout the entire playthrough, and even with a few cheesy lines, I was never taken out of the immersion. As mentioned before, there are a total of 21 achievements, all of which took me 8.2 hours to obtain. I will not be mentioning the ones handed to you just by playing, however let's start with the 2 pacifist achievements. As the title suggests, you'll need to complete the 2 chambers involving turrets without ever knocking one over. Sort of. You can knock them over, however not picking them up quick enough will fry their circuits. Then you'll need to restart and try again. I much enjoyed the challenge these provided. Just in Time is a weird achievement. You're supposed to deplete the conveyor's supply of weighted cubes. Very simply, just take the cube and place it anywhere not on the conveyor. I did this, however they're infinite spawning, so you'll get completion after around 10 cubes, but they just keep on coming. The hardest achievement award will be going to Fingerprinter. As explained, you must smear your dirty fingers all over beautiful glass windows with the warning to not touch them. There are around 5 or so windows scattered throughout the entire game you'll need to find, with a few not being incredibly obvious, assuming you are not going out of your way to look for them. I only have one complaint regarding the achievements. The descriptions of some of them are quite confusing. Using Pacifist as an example, you must complete the chamber 4-9 without knocking over turrets. The numbers meaning chapter 4, chamber 9. So they give you the chapter to select, but the chamber is not shown in any sort of listing or description. They sometimes appear in the preview window, but without that hint, you're replaying the chapter to figure out which chamber is where. Now let's go over some of the positives. It's a full-length prequel for Portal 2 as a fan-made mod, completely free to play if you already own Portal 2. Very well-written story with original characters. It has great humor and a beautiful atmosphere, including a lot of nature and overgrown elements. As for the negatives, a few portions of the game can feel like a walking simulator. Exploration is pointless as there are a lot of locked doors and pathways leading nowhere. Most new mechanics added are extremely underutilized, and the puzzles can be too easy if you have previous Portal experience. In conclusion, Portal Revolution is an amazing prequel to Portal 2, just like they were hoping for. I really wish the game was longer and they used the new mechanics to introduce just a little bit more, however I loved every second I played. If you own Portal 2 or are looking for an excuse to play another Portal, I cannot honestly recommend Revolution enough. It has everything you'd want from a a Portal game, and even a little more. That will conclude my Portal Revolution review. Thank you so much for watching if you made it this far. Let me know what you thought down below, or what game I should complete next. Subscribe so you never miss a video, and until next time, take care.
Welcome to the Aperture Science Enrichment Center.